History is not what is written, it is what was lived. For 4 centuries, they told us that the African in the Americas was a broken spirit, a tool of labor, a footnote in the story of European discovery. But the earth does not lie. Deep in the Serra de Barriga mountains of Brazil, beneath the roots of the palms, lies a receipt that breaks the colonial timeline. This is not just a hideout. This is a fortress. Archaeological LiDAR data has pulled back the veil of the jungle to reveal what they tried to burn from the record, the Republic of Palmares. While the founding fathers of the West were still debating human rights, a sovereign African state was already thriving in the heart of South America. It didn't last for a week or a year. It stood for 100 years. 100 years of black sovereignty. 100 years where the Portuguese crown, the most powerful empire of the era, sent expedition after expedition, only to be crushed by the military genius of the ancestors. We are not talking about runaways. We are talking about the Angola Janga, the Little Angola. We are talking about a civilization that defeated the masters of the world. They want us to believe that Palmares was a chaotic camp, but the logic of our ancestors was mathematical and divine. The scholarship of Beatriz Nascimento and Abdias do Nascimento settles the debt here. Palmares was not a reaction, it was a reconstruction. The builders of Palmares didn't just stumble into the mountains, they applied the Quilombo logic of Central Africa. This was a system of social and military initiation designed in the heat of Angolan wars and perfected in the Brazilian highlands. It was a fractal society. Small Macambos, villages connected into larger confederations, each a self-sustaining unit, yet all bound to the great lord, the Gunga Zumba. Mathematically, they achieved the impossible. In a territory the size of Portugal itself, they maintained a population of 20,000 to 30,000 citizens. This required a logistical mastery that the Portuguese could not comprehend. While the colonial plantations were failing due to their reliance on a single crop, the Palmarinos used polycultural engineering. They didn't grow for the European market, they grew for the African belly. This was the math of survival. By diversifying their crops, they ensured that Palmares could never be starved out. They became so successful that they actually traded their surplus back to the Portuguese settlers who were starving on the coast. Imagine the irony. The enslaved were feeding the masters. If you believe history should be told by the VICTORS, join the archive. Subscribe. To understand the architectural marvel of Palmares, you have to look at the capital, Macaco. It wasn't a village, it was an intellectual fortress. At the top of the Serra de Barriga, our ancestors built a city with 1,500 houses, wide streets, and a palace for the king. The engineering was designed for a 360-degree defense. They utilized the mountain's steep terrain as a natural force multiplier. They built hidden, false trails that led colonial soldiers directly into kill zones. This is the Quilombo at work, military science born from the soil. Inside these walls, life was sovereign. We cite the indigenous scholarship of Glenn Chaney. In Palmares, women were the backbone of the economy and the military. There was no European morality here. There was only necessity and efficiency. They blended the traditions of the Congo, the Yu, and the indigenous Tupi people who joined them. They weren't just farmers. Archaeological digs have found ironworking furnaces. They were smelting their own tools and weapons. They were a sovereign industrial state hidden in the clouds. For nearly a century, the European powers could not tolerate this receipt. The existence of Palmares was a virus in the colonial mind. If the African could be free and prosperous here, then the entire slave system would collapse. They sent 20 major expeditions. They sent the Dutch. They sent the Portuguese. They sent mercenaries. But for 95 years, they were sent back in pieces. The ancestors developed a guerrilla warfare style that turned the jungle itself into a weapon. Then came 1694. The Portuguese, desperate and broke, hired the Bandeirantes, professional killers who used cannons to do what infantry couldn't. They didn't defeat Palmares in a fair fight. They laid siege to Macaco for weeks, using heavy artillery to smash the wooden walls that had stood for a century. On November 20th, 1695, the great leader Zumbi was captured and executed. They took his head to the coast and put it on a pike to show the world that the African spirit was dead. But they were wrong. You can kill a king, but you cannot kill a receipt. They thought they erased the Palmares Republic. They burned the records. They claimed it was just a camp of thieves. But the LiDAR data and the indigenous scholarship of Beatriz Nascimento have brought the truth back to the surface. The Republic of Palmares is the receipt that proves we never stopped being sovereign. It proves that when we were stripped of our names and our land, we rebuilt Angola and the mountains of Brazil. It proves that our engineering, our math, and our military science are written in the earth. We are not the descendants of slaves. We are the descendants of the builders of Palmares. The archive has been reclaimed. The debt is settled. Watch our next story to see how the walls of Benin inspired the walls of the world. Click here. Stay sovereign.